Hello and welcome to Living Black. I'm Karla Grant. When the federal Voice to Parliament referendum was defeated in 2023, the idea of a First Nations voice did not die with it. Months earlier, South Australia had voted to have its own Indigenous Voice to Parliament legislated. For Aboriginal Affairs Minister and Attorney General Kyam Maher, it was a watershed moment, one which has seen him work tirelessly to see it established successfully. I travelled to Adelaide to speak to the Minister about what's next for the South Australian Voice. Kyam Maher, thank you so much for joining us on Living Black, and thank you for having us here on Kaurna country.
Thank you for being here, and it's a pleasure to join you. Something I think I've always wanted to do is to start taking this.
Well, you are the South Australian Attorney General and Aboriginal Affairs Minister, and this year South Australia will make history by establishing the country's first state Indigenous Voice to Parliament. We'll talk more about the voice later, but first, you spent most of your childhood living in the South Australian regional town of Mount Gambier. What was your childhood like growing up there?
In Mount Gambier, it's only about 25,000 people, but the second biggest town in the whole of South Australia. It was good growing up in a regional city. Sports are really important. It's often a close-knit community. It was a good experience growing up.
Both your parents were politically active. Did they inspire you to go into politics?
Yeah, I think so. I look back at, everyone sort of has influences, and certainly my mum would have been the biggest influence. She was the chair of the local Aboriginal health service in Mount Gambier for a while, a NAIDOC award winner in Mount Gambier, and a life member of the Labor Party. So what I do, combining activism in Aboriginal affairs through political means, is sort of taking two of the things my mum held dear in her life. So very strongly influenced in that way.
And your mum, Auntie Viv, was a fierce social justice advocate and did a lot of work in the community. Did she pass on her passion for helping others to you? Yeah,
absolutely. That passion she had for social justice and for her community, something that was instilled in me, and she did it on a sort of one-on-one basis, changed people's lives directly, working with them. The field I'm in, it's more adjusting the settings to allow better things to happen. So. Very similar sorts of ideas about the way we want to affect change in the world, just doing it in different ways.
You learnt of your Aboriginal heritage much later in life. How did you learn of your Aboriginality?
It's something that the family had always known, but certainly in years gone by, it's not something that was as proudly recognised or discussed as it is today. It was only later in my mum's life that she talked much more about it. She would relate to me as a girl being told, you're not to talk at school about being Aboriginal. That's not something we discuss. The change we've seen over the last few decades, I think, has been a really good one, where particularly Aboriginal kids are much more proud of who they are than I think they have been in decades and centuries gone past in this country.
What has that journey of self-discovery been like for you?
It's been interesting. It's been fulfilling. Certainly, since I've started working in Aboriginal affairs, more than 20 years ago, one of the things I often get asked when I'm out in community is about my heritage, my upbringing, but certainly over recent years becoming more and more involved. I've spent a lot of time up on the APY lands on Pitjantjatjara and Yunkanjatjara country, and it's been a real privilege to become more involved in different groups right around South Australia.
In 2015, you came out publicly about your Aboriginal heritage. Since then, your identity has been called into question.
It's about a very senior Labor politician who says he's Aboriginal, but seems could very well be wrong, and he isn't answering my questions.
What do you say to those critics?
Nothing, quite frankly. If people want to criticise, that's up to them. I know who I am, and I just get on with what I do.
How does it make you feel to be the subject of such scrutiny?
It says more about people who want to engage in this sort of discussion, I think, than it does about anything else. That's up to other people. I just tend to ignore it.
After studying law and economics at the University of